Kento DiCaprio, Ibaraki, Japan, has written and says, "Hey guys, thank you so much for your podcast. I found it only a month ago, but I've been binge listening your catalogue each day. Thank you very much. This might be a strange question, but hopefully it will be interesting to your listeners as well as potentially helpful to myself. I've been wrestling in Japanese indies for over 10 years, and over time I've taken pride in it and have grown to feel that being a wrestler has become an important part of my personal identity. Getting deeper into my 40s, and with bookings becoming scarce, it is clear that retirement is around the corner. I have dread in accepting this reality, losing a part of myself, or the feeling of being dumped by your first love. Is this common with perhaps especially less accomplished wrestlers when deciding to call it quits? Would you have any advice for someone to be able to retire without regrets? Best regards, and thank you again."
Again, I'm going to go back to that word I used earlier, or on our sister podcast. It's an addiction. This guy, what's his name?
Kento DiCaprio.
All right, Kento, you have an addiction to wrestling, and through no fault of your own. I've had people say, yeah, anything wrestling related that they see in the paper or they see anywhere, if they just see the word wrestling or wrestling, or talk about a talent that they know, they're there. They're going to be there. And yes, I think it is a big of an addiction and hard to get off of as heroin. That's what I think. And if you got it, I don't think there's a cure for it, to tell you the truth. I think, and if you're worried about getting out and going into retirement, well, I think you might need to keep doing it, because apparently you don't depend on it for your livelihood. So just keep doing, stay active in it. And it's the only thing I can tell you. It's like, instead of taking heroin, why don't you take some aspirin? I mean, just don't go off of it cold turkey,
like
because
methadone.
you're going
Methadone, just work your way down.
Yeah, don't go fentanyl. Don't do that yet. Especially if it's a colored fentanyl, stay away from it, because they've tainted it with something. So, yeah, you have an addiction, and I think you're the one that has to work through that. I can't give you any suggestions on it.
It's a good question, though. It's like retiring without regrets. I mean, you know,
is that what he said?
Yeah. How would he go about retiring without regrets? I mean, how can one do that if you've not achieved everything you want? Because no one really achieves everything they want to do in wrestling.
But he is. But he's not retiring. He's not retiring. You don't quit wrestling. Wrestling quits you. We said that with Mick Foley on the podcast, on the sister podcast, because he didn't quit because he wanted to. He quit because he just really couldn't do it anymore, and he couldn't stay up with it. So that is the same thing as wrestling quits you. And you'll know when it's time. Apparently, from his letter, he doesn't want to quit. So he needs to stay involved in it somehow, some way. Just because you're not in the ring actively performing doesn't mean you can't help. You can put stuff together, just stay around it. I think you're just, I do a Vince McMahon, just make yourself the head of it and just tell everybody to kiss my ass, pal. You can do that. But, and anyway, hey, if you tuned in early and you saw the first Vince McMahon, Vince McMahon little cartoon, blame that on James. I had nothing to do with it.
This is still on your mind then, is it? Do you think does this podcast help you with your wrestling addiction? Because you're not in wrestling, but it's like wrestling adjacent. You talk about it, people listen.
Well, I never had a wrestling addiction. What I had was a money addiction, is what I had. I needed money to live. So, and I like talking about it to some people if they're not, I've had people come up and they're very rude sometimes. Like, oh, what'd you ever do? This, that, and I won't talk to you. And if you want to be nice, I'll talk to you a little bit. But I think there is a fascination about this business that goes behind the fourth wall, and they want to know what goes on. And I don't want to make it seem like ordinary, but it's the same thing that happens in big offices. If you have people jockeying for position, jockeying for a raise, jockeying for a promotion, you want to get ahead of this guy, or that lady, it's the same thing. And it has its politics like everything else. But one thing it's not, it's never boring. Never boring, because, and you got to watch what you say and who you say it around, because if the wrong people hear it, you could be in for a little bit of a rough time.